Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session this morning. I'm going to make a joke already right off the bat by saying we're not here to look down at ODF, but their camera is in the basement of their building. So we're going to have a minute to get introduced to them, but I want to just welcome everybody to the webinar. It looks like there's about 20 folks on the webinar this morning, which is great. This is a special session just for watershed councils. I think most of you are from the west side. There might be a few others from other parts of the state, but so most of you guys know me. I'm Sean Morford. I'm the executive director of the network, your network. And by the way, thank you for whoever is a member of the network. We really appreciate your support. And this is an example of what your membership dues are bringing you, which is opportunities to connect and get information that's relevant to your work. This is a bit of a bonus webinar. We normally do these on the third Thursday of every month, as many of you know. But in this case, we've been in touch with the folks, the staff at the monitoring unit at the Private Forest Division at ODF, and they've been looking for ways to connect with watershed councils to get information to you and also to get feedback from you on the work that they're doing, data analysis, research, and literature review on the Streamside and riparian work that they're doing for the Board of Forestry. So this is their opportunity to share with you what they've been doing, and I know they have some questions for you, so there's a chance for you to engage with them. If you've been on these webinars before, you know how this works, but there are two ways that you can intersect with the presenters. One is by raising your little hand. There's a little icon hand, and if you click on it, it will alert me as the moderator that you want to be unmuted. Everybody is muted by default, but I can unmute you and you can ask your question verbally if you have a microphone. The other way you can intersect is to type your question in the question box, and I will be watching for those, and I'll look for a polite moment to interrupt the speaker and ask the question. I know there's going to be time at the end for Q&A, but they've invited me to invite you to ask questions as we go through their presentation. There's a short survey at the end, and there are some questions not only asking about how useful this session was to you, but also if you want to stay in touch with these folks going forward. There's a way to add your name and contact information. There's a couple of handouts that you can download. I think they're basically the talking points for both the Western Oregon and the Siskiyou regions that they'll be talking about today. And lastly, I just want to remind you about the upcoming webinar. It's a little commercial. On December 20, so a couple of weeks from now, there will be a webinar with districts, land trusts, and watershed councils together on seeing our work through the lens of climate change. So a really important topic, very timely, and we already have 40 people signed up for it, which is, I think, a record for us this early. So we know it's something that that councils are talking about and wondering how to respond and how to talk to your boards, how to talk to your stakeholders about climate change, or if to do that at all. So I think it's a beginning of a really important conversation. So that's on December 20, and if you haven't seen the email to announce it, put a little question in the question box, and I'll make sure that we get information to you. Okay, that's it on my announcements. Now I'm going to introduce you to Adam, who's going to introduce the rest of his team there. So Adam Cole is a monitoring specialist in the monitoring unit of the Private Forest Division of the Oregon Department of Forestry. And Adam and his team are there in Salem, and he's going to launch us off with some introductions. So it is all yours, Adam.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. I'm just going to take a second to adjust our screen. There we go. Okay, thanks, Sean, for working us into the webinar schedule. And thanks, everyone, for attending the webinar today. I'm Adam Coble, monitoring specialist, and I'll have the rest of our team introduce themselves.
My name is Ariel Cowan, and I'm also a monitoring specialist here in Salem for the Private Forest Division of ODF.
And I think you might be able to see me. This is Terry Free. I'm also with the monitoring group. I'm the monitoring coordinator. And Margann Allen is our manager for forest health and for monitoring. And she's not in the room right now, but will be here shortly.
Thanks. So today we'll be presenting on streamside protection reviews for Western Oregon and Siskiyou. So for this talk, we wanted to inform watershed councils of the projects that we're working on and to give you an opportunity to provide feedback. We thought the watershed councils would be interested in our work, primarily because the projects address topics such as stream temperature, large wood and streams, riparian forest, and shade, which are important for the overall health of aquatic ecosystems in Oregon. So with that, in the presentation, we'll be covering who we are and what we do, topics of the projects, and then we'll get into the projects, Western Oregon. I think after Western Oregon, there'll be a poll question for you to answer. And then Ariel Cowan will be presenting on the Siskiyou project, and then we'll wrap it up with timelines and next steps. And then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. So I wanted to start out just with a broad overview of Oregon Department of Forestry. So we have many responsibilities. I listed a few key ones here. We are the state agency for administering the Forest Practices Act, or the FPA. The FPA sets standards for all commercial activities that include the establishment, management, or harvesting of trees on Oregon's non-federal forest lands. ODF also works with landowners and operators to help them to comply with requirements of the FPA. ODF also actively manages state forest land, and we have a fire protection program that plays a key role in protecting Oregon's forests from wildfire. We also have an important seed source for regrowing Oregon forests. That's the Schroeder Seed Orchard. And we're also responsible for effectiveness and implementation monitoring, which is where we come in. So the monitoring unit is part of ODF Private Forest Division. We've introduced ourselves. John Hawksworth is also a monitoring specialist. He works mainly with the implementation monitoring. We all work out of the Salem headquarters, and that's where we spend most of our time, but occasionally we do have time to get out into the field. So we conduct monitoring to meet expectations in statute, rule, and policy. It also meets agency best practice to close the loop on the plan-do check cycle. So as part of this process, the monitoring unit reports outcomes to the Board of Forestry for their consideration. So the expectations emphasize a collaborative approach, continuous learning, and adapting to new science. So one of the Board of Forestry's responsibilities is to make the call on whether to adopt or revise rules for forest practices. So at the end of the reviews that we're currently working on, the board may respond in a few different ways, including finding that the FPA rules are working as designed. The FPA rules may not meet stated objectives. They may decide that additional study is needed or no action action is needed. So our work can be broadly categorized into two types. There's implementation and effectiveness monitoring. For the implementation monitoring, we conduct compliance audits that assess landowner compliance with the FPA rules. We just wrapped up a 4-year study, and we'll be moving on to a new study that focuses on reforestation. We also conduct effectiveness studies that evaluate the effectiveness of the FPA rules in protecting natural resources, which is what we'll be presenting on today, 2 effectiveness studies, the Western Oregon Streamside Protections Review and the Siskiyou Protections Review. These projects assess riparian protections along both small and medium fish streams. So that would include fish-bearing streams less than 10 CFS. The figure here illustrates the topics of the reviews. The desired future condition considers riparian stand conditions, and we'll talk more about this in a moment. Stream temperature and shade are also another major topic. So all these are focused in the Siskiyou region. And then the final topic we'll examine is large wood, which along with desired future conditions, or DFC, are assessed in the rest of Western Oregon. So since DFC is common to both reviews, it's helpful to examine what DFC means. In the FPA rules, desired future conditions for fish streams are to grow and retain vegetation so that over time average conditions across the landscape become similar to those of mature streamside stands. The FPA rules also define mature streamside stands as being often dominated by conifer species and has a stand age of 80 to 200 years old. Mature stands are also described as providing multiple functions, including ample shade, abundance of aquatic large wood, root masses along edges of streams, snags, and inputs of nutrients through leaf litter. For the Western Oregon review, the overarching question is, are the FPA rules effective in achieving the goals for desired future conditions in large wood? So when we refer to Western Oregon, we're referring to everything west of the Cascades except for the Siskiyou region. So for this study, we will be using multiple lines of evidence to address the question. First, we'll be using systematic reviews. We'll have a field data analysis component, and then third, a modeling analysis. And I'll talk more about these in more detail. First, wanted to talk a little bit about systematic literature reviews. The department embraced the methods of a systematic review for a few reasons. The systematic reviews include a rigorous protocol for reviewing scientific literature, documented methods to search for relevant literature, uses detailed criteria to determine which literature to include in the review, and also includes methods for data extraction and synthesis, mainly to avoid author biases. Also, it allows for input from stakeholders and tribes, which is built into the review process. So for the systematic review for Western Oregon includes both DFC and large wood. For both, we'll be evaluating the effects of forest management on DFC and large wood. And when we refer to large wood, we're referring to large wood recruitment into streams. We'll also be assessing the range of conditions for both DFC and large wood. For DFC, we'll also be looking at species composition and regeneration. And then for large wood, something hopefully we can shed some light on is what is considered an abundance of large wood, which is the language that's currently used in the FPA. For the field data analysis component, we're using 3 questions from the original ODF RipStream protocol. So just a bit of background on RipStream. That was a study that began in 2002 to assess riparian stand conditions before and after harvesting, as well as stream temperature and shade. And this was a study by ODF and others. So the questions are, what are the trends in overstory and understory riparian characteristics? What are the trends in riparian area regeneration? And are the rules effective in maintaining large wood recruitment to streams and down wood in riparian areas? We'll be using data from the RipStream study, which to date is mainly focused on stream temperature and shade. The RipStream data were collected in 33 sites in the Oregon Coast Range, and there's a map figure on the right that shows where those sites were. That included private and state land along small and medium fish-bearing streams. Data included pre- and post-harvest data, and I won't go into too much detail, but it includes data on overstory trees, understory vegetation, downwood, and aquatic large wood. So the final line of evidence is the use of forest stand modeling. So we're currently exploring sort of the best approach to this, and we're still figuring out the scope and role of the modeling analysis, but the idea would be to model stand growth, mortality, and regeneration of riparian stands to predict stand conditions 80 to 200 years after or under management conditions that are consistent with the FPA. We're still deciding whether to do large wood recruitment modeling. So our game plan is, at this point, to obtain more information, basically, just figuring out what models could be used, the timeline, the cost, in order to help the Board of Forestry to make a decision about whether we should do the modeling. So to date, we've developed course timelines for Western Oregon. We've reached out to stakeholders and tribes and partner agencies, just provided them an overview of the work like we are today. And for the field data analysis, I've developed an overview of the methods and analysis and this was in a document to sort of outline our approach to the analysis. We sent that out to stakeholders and tribes and received feedback, and we recently revised that based on feedback. So moving forward, we plan to complete the data analysis this spring, 2019. And we also will be sending the RFI, which is the request for information. I think I skipped over that, but that's the primary mechanism by which we'll obtain information about the model. This will get sent out to the public, but we'll be requesting feedback from stakeholders to get input on that request, and that will be finished this spring 2019. And then sort of longer term, we'll be presenting the findings to the board and options for modeling in the fall of 2019. So I believe it's time for the poll question.
Yeah, the question is what types of forest landowners do you work with? Just industrial or small, non-industrial, private, or both, or neither? Looks like about half the group has weighed in, Adam.
Okay. Do you want to let us know when we continue?
Yeah, I'll give you the results as soon as people are done. It looks like, you know what, 100% so far are saying both.
Okay.
So I bet that's about where we're going to land on this. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and close, and then I'll show what the results are. 100% work with both private, industrial and small private.
Shall we continue?
Yeah, so I'm gonna hand it off to Ariel Callan, who's gonna present on the Siskiyou study.
Great. So thank you, Adam. Adam provided some background on desired future conditions and the projects focusing on Western Oregon regions. The Siskiyou Streamside Protection Review is a concurrent project looking at streamside protections. And so the Siskiyou region is unique for its geology, climate, terrain, and vegetation. Riparian forests are different here than in other Western Oregon regions, and forest management is often different in this region as well. And this map here just demonstrates clear-cut harvest in percentage. So the warmer colors show greater amount of clear-cut, and so you can see here more of the Western Oregon regions use more clear-cut, whereas the Siskiyou region, there's more thinning that occurs. So that's just one of the many ways that the Siskiyou region is unique. And so acknowledging all of this, per the board's direction, the department is moving forward with a separate set of streamside protection reviews, looking at this region for small and medium fish-bearing streams. So with the various work products to come out of this, we will be conducting a review of the scientific literature on temperature and shade, and we will also be conducting a literature review on desired future condition, which Adam spoke about. Lastly, we will be working in coordination with partner agencies to provide some contextual information on fish status and trend and water quality, and bringing that to the board. And I'll speak about that in a little bit. So just to give a little more detail, the primary question that we're asking for temperature and shade is whether the FPA rules are effective in achieving the goals for stream temperature and shade. And so we will be conducting an assessment of the scientific literature, looking at private forest management effects on changes to water temperature and whether those changes are within DEQ water quality standards. As well, there will be an assessment of what literature is already out there on how shade measurements compare with mature streamside stands in the Siskiyou. So for desired future conditions, the question we're asking are whether the FPA rules are effective in achieving the goals for desired future conditions of riparian forests. So we will take a look at in the literature what the range of DFC conditions are in Siskiyou mature streamside stands, just to try to get an understanding of what DFC looks like in the Siskiyous, and look at understory and overstory vegetation for comparison between mature stands and between managed stands. and also look at regeneration. So I mentioned contextual information. We have been in talks with DEQ and ODFW to bring this contextual information to our Board of Forestry. So DEQ will present to the board on TMDLs, total maximum daily loads, and ODF&W will present on fish status and trend, and they will be presenting that information to the Board of Forestry on January 9th. That's coming up soon. In addition to this, DEQ has provided us with temperature, shade, and riparian forest information that we can use in our systematic literature review. And ODF&W will be providing shade and riparian forest information that we can use in that systematic literature review as well. So just an idea of what we have worked on so far. We have course timelines that we've developed. We've also conducted some outreach, including this presentation here. But we've spoken with various stakeholders and tribes through emails, phone conversations, and in-person meetings, and also have met with partner agencies on this effort. And we created a draft protocol for the systematic review for Siskiyou, and this was sent out a little while ago. Maybe some of you recall that, and we received a number of responses for feedback, which at this point we have revised the protocol in terms of that stakeholder and tribal feedback, which we anticipate getting the updated protocol and responses to the feedback. We'll be sending that out to everyone around the time before Christmas. So we've also started our initial searching and filtering of literature. So that has begun based on the updated protocol. And our next steps include an update to the Board of Forestry in January, and that will be the time I mentioned previously that ODFW and DEQ will present on contextual information at that meeting. We will be sending out a list of studies that have been filtered through and deemed for inclusion, and that we anticipate sending out in the next week. And this is also the time that we are requesting any studies that you may know of that we potentially have missed. So this is the opportunity for that when we send out that list of studies within the next week. And then we anticipate presenting the findings of this review to the Board of Forestry in April, and this is a tentative timeline for that. So that is the status of this review as of now. So as I mentioned before, we are looking for you to send us some studies that you would like to be considered in the Siskiyou review. And just for clarity, we have this all outlined in our protocol, but as a summary of the criteria, any literature to be included would be within the Siskiyou or Klamath region in Oregon or Northern California. That the setting would be forests next to small or medium fish streams. There would have to be methods written up. So even if this is, just a report, a monitoring report of some form with data, we would have to be able to see what the methods are of that report. And the data that would be included in these pieces of literature would have to be on either stream-side forest conditions, whether that be basal area or species composition, shade, or stream temperature. So it could be all of these or one or the other. Any of the papers that we can decide whether we can determine whether they can be included, they do not have to be published as long as they meet the criteria. We understand that there's a lot of monitoring reports out there that have not been published, but they could provide useful information. So, yeah, now we can open it up for questions, and I'd like to say again thank you for attending and listening in. And thank you in advance if you can send us any studies.
Great, Ariel. This is Sean. I've got a question while I'm waiting for anybody else to raise their hand or type a question in. So I have sort of a crystal ball question. I mean, today's presentation was a lot about the process you're going through, which is really important to know. And I wonder, you know, January isn't very far away, so you must be, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but I would be curious, if we promise not to hold you to it, I would be curious if there's anything that starts to rise to the top to you. You know, this is going to affect how private landowners operate, and is there anything that would come out that wouldn't surprise you? Or, I mean, what is your gut telling you about the results of this, or is it too soon to say?
I would say it's too soon to say, because right now we're just looking through the literature to see which ones can be included. So January is really just an update to the board, and really the report won't be out until sometime this spring. So it's kind of, so I've got Terry and Margan here too, and maybe they have some thoughts on it.
No, it's Margan. I would echo what Ariel said, that it's really too early to say at this point. So, yeah.
And would it be fair to say anything about the range of possibilities? Just to try and get to wrap one's head around what this could mean. Is that too early, or I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but I'm just kind of curious about the implications of the process that you're going through now. Is it is it too early to say, or what's your sense of it? What are you telling people?
I'm going to go back to this slide here. So really our purpose is to find what information exists out there and bring it to the Board of Forestry. And these are the ways that the Board of Forestry could respond. They could decide that the rules work as designed. They could say that they're not meeting the objectives. It's possible, if they see that there's not enough information out there, they could say to us, additional study is warranted. And so that we can't even say for sure what that would look like if they asked for that. You know, what the possibilities are, but they could also say no action is needed. So we just want to be as transparent about that as possible, that this is the way the Board of Forestry might respond.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to see that slide again. I'll be reminded of that. Yeah. Great.
Helpful for me.
Okay, I'm going to just open it up for any other questions that anybody wants to ask, or I'm curious if folks feel like they have access to studies that maybe haven't been shared yet, or if anybody, you know, is aware of any studies or has them on their shelves in their libraries, in their offices, or whether or not. The lines are open. Okay, here's a question. How frequently does a review of current Forest Practice Act rules take place? When was the last time a similar process like this was completed?
And this Margan, I've welcome everybody. Thank you. I manage the forest practices monitoring unit. We literally just completed our review of the protection standards in the rest of Western Oregon, and that was what preceded the rule change process for the salmon, steelhead, and bull trout stream protections, and resulted in that outcome. That having said that, there is not a stated schedule per se of in 2020 rule X or Y will be reviewed, but we do have it in a more qualitative sense in that in 2016 the board approved our monitoring strategy. And that prioritizes according to high, medium, low kind of priority, both for effectiveness questions and implementation questions, what we would prioritize to look at over time. So again, it's not on a set schedule per se, but if you can imagine that, say, for example, at the end of the Siskiyou review that the board decided that, thank you, things are working as desired or there's no action needed, process-wise, what we would end up doing is we would look to our monitoring strategy to pick what we would do next, unless the board or something of your legislature or something obviously that would create a high priority for us would dictate that we would look to something new or different as a priority. I hope that answers that question.
If not, the question asker can
please
can elaborate. And the Forest Practices Act relates to many more operations than riparian. I mean, so I don't know if Daniel, you're asking about all forest practice rules on all topics or just riparian?
No. Oh no, the strategy I referred to was open to anything in the Forest Practices Act rules or statutes is fair game, and it does include more than riparian. But historically, riparian and water has always been amongst the highest priority concerns for both the board and the larger public. We see that reflected in the Oregon Forest Resources Institute surveys that they do with the general public, and that water quality is of primary concern. So that's just been a long-term focus for the agency, but everything's fair game.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, anybody else want to ask a question or make a comment? I'm not seeing any come in. Maybe I will just let people know that this will be recorded and it will be posted on the network of Oregon Watershed Council's website. And did you include your contact information? I can't remember on your last slide.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, here it is. I see your slide. Yeah. So phone numbers and emails. If anybody has any more questions they want to ask you, should they start with you, Adam?
That would be, that would work. And then if I can direct it to other folks if needed. Okay.
And I'll just tell you folks also, if you want to get information to Watershed Councils just in a written form, we do a regular newsletter, news briefs. I send out emails to all Watershed Councils. So that's another way that you can give updates if you would want to do it that way. So.
Oh, great. That's
great. What frequency is that done at, Sean?
Oh, I would like to say it's monthly, but sometimes it's more frequent, sometimes it's less. It depends on what's going on and what information I have to get out. But depending on the topic, I can send out as frequently as we need. If there's something coming up that if you have a timeline on it, we can get it out sooner. Yeah, it's pretty flexible.
Okay, thank you.
So, all right. Well, with that, I'm going to thank Adam, Ariel, Terry, and Margan for doing this today, and all of you for participating. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys at the next round and learning more about what you're hearing from the board in the spring.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, we thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna end the webinar now. Thank you all. You're getting thank yous from the question box. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
Appreciate the time.
Happy
Bye for
holidays.
now. Yeah, you too.